I would like to welcome everyone to Drisha's fall programming and the first part of a series on Abraham Joshua Heschel and human dignity as a divine concern by Dr. Dror Bondi. Dr. Dror Bondi is dedicated to bringing Abraham Joshua Heschel's thought to Israel, translating his works into Hebrew, and transforming Israel by his spirit. He holds a doctorate in Jewish thought from Bar Ilan University and is a popular lecturer in a variety of institutions, especially at Machon Kerem of the David Yellin College of Education. Dr. Bondi lives with his family in the community of the urban kibbutz Beit Israel in Jerusalem, a community of religious and non-religious Jews who unite together in social and spiritual activism. And without further ado, Dr. Bondi.
Thank you everybody for coming. May I start with a short introduction about myself. The first thing you have to know is that I have 6 kids, and now it's bedtime in Israel. So I have to apologize for all the noise, and if my youngest twins, 7 years old, will get into the room, I apologize for all the problems. And the second introduction is that I'm not a real scholar. I'm not an objective scholar. I'm a Chassid of Heschel. I admire him. In fact, he changed my life. I grew up in a small settlement in the West Bank in Israel, in a very hardcore right-wing family, and Heschel changed my life. In fact, my family was so right-wing that the message was you shouldn't learn to speak English. English is the language of the Gentiles. You should speak only Hebrew. And only when I met Heschel, I understood that the Torah of our days was revealed in English. So please forgive me for my English mistakes and for my Israeli accent. And I hope that my admiration for Heschel will be worth my mistakes. Okay, let's start. Do you know Heschel? Did you read him? Yes, great. So today I will try to introduce Heschel by his spiritual biography as a source for his thought. As you know, Heschel is a famous figure in the US. Maybe I will start with the last source, which speak about his rule in the history of the US. I will share with you the page sources. If you want, you can open it in your computer. And I will start with the last source. It's from Heschel's daughter, Professor Susanna Heschel, and she quotes Niebuhr, as well as Martin Luther King and Heschel himself. I think these quotes are the best quotes about Heschel's important impact about United States. Does someone want to read this text? I'm trying to let you get in. Does someone want? If you don't, if no one will read, you will have to suffer my Hebrew accent, my Israeli accent. Okay, I will read it. It's your fault. Let's start. Abraham Heschel, Niebuhr wrote, was one of the treasures of mind and spirit by which the persecutions unloosed in Europe inadvertently enriched our American culture. It is a safe guess that he will become a commanding and authoritative voice not only in the Jewish community, but in the religious life of America. Yes, for Niebuhr, the famous Christian philosopher, Heschel's voice is not only a Jewish voice, but a Jewish voice that is a commanding voice for all the Americans. And let's continue. In his introduction of King to the audience, it is the audience of Heschel's 60th birthday. When Heschel was 60, there was a gathering. There was a meeting of rabbis for his birthday, and they invited Martin Luther King to speak, and Heschel introduced Martin Luther King by this word. Where in America today do we hear a voice like the voice of the prophets of Israel? Martin Luther King is a sign that God has not forsaken the United States of America. God has sent him to us. His presence is the hope of America. His mission is secret. His leadership of supreme importance to every one of us. Wow. And I will continue. In his address, King states that Heschel is indeed a truly great prophet. He went on, here and there, we find those who refuse to remain silent behind the safe security of stained glass windows. And they are forever seeking to make the great ethical insight of our Judeo-Christian heritage relevant in this day and in this age. I feel that Rabbi Heschel is one of the persons who relevant at all times, always sending with prophetic insight to guide us through these difficult days. I have to apologize again for my accent, but I hope that you can hear the spiritual and the moral and the uniqueness of Heschel's thought. Heschel is not a regular Jewish philosopher. Most of the Jewish philosophers, if we can think about Rambam, Maimonides, or Rabbi Soloveitchik, saw their mission to help the Jews. The poor Jew live in a non-Jew environment, and we, the philosophers, have to help him. Yes, the Rambam tried to help the Jews to confront, Aristotle thought, and to help the Jews to solve the problems between science and religion 800 years ago. And Rabbi Soloveitchik tried to help the Jews in New York City and in the Western civilization to live in the same time as modern and Orthodox. Yes, this was their mission, to help the Jews. Abraham Joshua Heschel is a very it is another kind of philosopher. His mission was not to help the Jews. His mission was to change the world by the Jewish thought, by the Jewish tradition, by the Jewish inspiration. And here we can see how Niebuhr, as well as Martin Luther King, were affected by Heschel's thought. His audience, the audience of Abraham Joshua Heschel, is Martin Luther King. He didn't write only for the Jewish audience. He wrote to the world. He wrote to the world Jewish philosophy. but he wrote this Jewish philosophy to all the people. He believed that the Jewish philosophy can change the world and have to help all the people, all the, especially the Western civilization, to become more moral, more spiritual, more humanistic. And I have to say, maybe I believe all you know the famous, maybe the most famous book of Heschel, The Sabbath. You know this book. Does someone remember what is the subtitle of this book? The Sabbath? What is its subtitle? You have to unmute yourself. You unmute yourself if you want to say. Do you remember?
It was time. A Sabbath.
This is the main topic of the book, but what is the subtitle? The title is The Sabbath, and the subtitle is The Sabbath, its meaning for modern man, not for the Jews. The most famous book of Heschel, The Sabbath, you know, what is relevant? Why Martin Luther King should read about the Sabbath? What about Shabbat? What Martin Luther King will not cook in Shabbat? Why the Sabbath? Its meaning for modern man, for all the modern human beings. Why? What is the relevance of the Shabbat for Martin Luther King, for Niebuhr? What is the relevant? What its meaning? What is the meaning of Shabbat to all the modern people? No, Heschel believed that the Shabbat has a lot of meaning to all the people, not only for Jews, because Shabbat is not only halacha. Shabbat is not only Jewish law. Shabbat is first and foremost a unique philosophy about time. And this unique philosophy can change the world, can help fight racism. This is why Shabbat is so relevant to modern men, to all the modern human beings. Okay, but this was the end of Heschel. What was his beginning? Heschel, I believe you know, was born in Warsaw on 1907. He was born in Warsaw, in Poland, to a very famous Hasidic family. His father was a rabbi. His grandfather was a rabbi, Hasidic rabbi, Rebbe. You know, with the Streimel and with the Kvittel and all the Hasidic environment. And his grandfather was also a rabbi. He was the seventh generation of a very famous Hasidic dynasty. His first grandfather was the Maggid of Mezerich, the most important student of the Besht, Rabbi Dov Ber of Mezerich, the Maggid, is one of the most famous figure in the Hasidic history, and Heschel was his seventh generation. And as you know, when you born to such a family, you have to be a Rebbe also. You can't run out of your duty. And Heschel was named after his very famous grandfather, the grandfather, the Actor Rav, Abraham Joshua Heschel, is a very famous Hasidic name. And he was taught as a child to be a Rebbe. All the people he met as a child knew that one day he will be the new Rebbe. And let's, Heschel passed away on the last week of December 72 from heart attack. In fact, it was his second heart attack. The first heart attack he got in a fly in the sky of the US when he came back to his home in New York City in Manhattan from a lecture in Milwaukee, and the airplane had to land immediately, and they took Heschel to hospital, and he almost died. He was half a year in the hospital, and when he got out from hospital, he said, "I have to write a Hasidic book. I have to write a book about my background, about the Kotzker Rebbe who changed my life." And he wrote this book, and he submitted the manuscript to the publisher, and 3 weeks later he got his last heart attack and died. Namely, that the introduction of the book about the Kotzker, A Passion for Truth, as you can see here, this book, A Passion for Truth, is Heschel's last work, and the introduction, as you know, introduction is the last thing you write in your book. This introduction is maybe the last text of Heschel in his life, and in his last text of his life, he shared with us about his background. As you can see, the title of the introduction to A Passion for Truth is why I had to write this book. Why? He is going to tell us. Maybe I will make it bigger. It's better, right? Maybe now someone wants to read. Oh, you will have to suffer my English. Okay, I will read.
If you like, I will read.
Thank you. You are saving my life. Please.
I was born in Warsaw, Poland, but my cradle stood in Metsbiz, a small town in the province of Podolia, Ukraine, where the Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, lived during the last 20 years of his life. That is where my father came from, and he continued to regard it as his home. He confided in me, for I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews. It was because of the advice of his spiritual mentor, Rabbi David Moshe, his uncle, the Rebbe of Shorshkov, son of Reb Israel of Rizim, that he took up residence in Poland. I was named after my grandfather, Reb Abraham Joshua Heschel, the Apter Rav, and the last great Rebbe of Mezbiz. He was marvelous in all his ways, and it was as if the Baal Shem Tov had come to life in him. When he died in 1825, he was buried next to the holy Baal Shem. The Apter Rav claimed that his soul had lived in several incarnations, and for his descendants, it was as if he had never died. Enchanted by a wealth of traditions and tales, I felt truly at home in Mezbiz, the little town so distant from Warsaw, yet so near was the...
Please continue. It's
okay. All right. The earliest fascination I can recall is associated with the Baal Shem, whose parables disclosed some of the first insights I gained as a child. He remained a model too sublime to follow, yet too overwhelming to ignore. It was in my 9th year that the presence of Reb Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, known as the Kotzker, entered my life. Since then, he has remained a steady companion and a haunting challenge. Although he often stunted me, he also urged me to confront perplexities that I might have preferred to evade. Years later, I realized that, in being guided by both the Baal Shem Tov and the Kotzker, I had allowed two forces to carry on the struggle within me. One was occasionally mightier than the other. But who was to prevail? Which was to be my guide? Both spoke convincingly, and each proved right on one level, yet questionable on another. In a very strange way, I found my soul at home with the Baal Shem, but driven by the Kotzker. Was it good to live with one's heart torn between the joy of mitzvahs and the anxiety of Kotzk? To live both in awe and consternation, in fervor and horror, with my conscience on mercy and my eyes on Auschwitz, wavering between exaltation and dismay. Was this the life a man would choose to live? I had no choice. My heart was in Mezbiz, my mind in Kotzk.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What do you say about this marvelous text? What kind of background, what childhood? I believe that you understand that what happened that Heschel's father was died when Heschel was almost 10 years old. And because of this, Heschel have to meet the students of the Kotzker Rebbe. And since then, the saying of the Baal Shem Tov from one side and the saying of the Kotzker Rebbe from the other side fought in his soul. Do you know the history of the Hasidic movement? What was the great saying of the Baal Shem Tov? You know, the Baal Shem Tov saw God everywhere. The Baal Shem Tov said, all you need is love, because you can meet God everywhere, in every love, in the nature, in every people, in every man, every woman, everything. God was everywhere. This was the Baal Shem Tov thought, but the Kotzker had a black soul. He can't saw God everywhere. He believes that you can find God only when you let him get into your life. That this is not an easy task to see God everywhere. In fact, that you can't see God everywhere, and this is you have to fight every day in order to meet God, in order to see the good in the humanity. And these two persons, all of yes, you know, Heschel revealed us in his last text that all his life is a fighting between the question if you can see God everywhere, or maybe you can't see God, or maybe you can't see him. It's a very deep secret of Heschel, because when you read Heschel, every word you can hear the voice of God. But now, after his heart attack, he revealed us that there is an abyss in his heart, that his faith in the humanity, that his faith in God, that his faith in peace, that is all his words, great words, is a fight against the voice of the Holocaust, against the voice of the absence of God. And maybe he had to write this book because that his heart attack, his last heart attack, was several months after Martin Luther King was killed. The murder of Martin Luther King shocked Heschel. He believed that Martin Luther King is a sign that God has not forsaken the United States of America, and suddenly, what happened to America, to the American dream? You know, in these days, it's not easy again to believe in the United States of America. It's a very, very complicated time, as well as in Israel. And maybe this book, A Passion for Truth, this is the Heschel's answer to our days. When you believe, when you live in good times, it's very easy to see God everywhere for some people. But when you live in harsh times, Heschel had to write this book after Martin Luther King. After, you know, if Martin Luther King wouldn't be murdered, how do you say? Sorry for my grammar. If Martin Luther King should come to Leila Seder, to Passover night in Heschel's home, only several days after the murder, it was deep shock for Heschel to see what happened to Martin Luther King and what happened in Vietnam. Heschel was very disappointed about Vietnam. He said, "I can't pray when on my conscience I have the war in Vietnam." So his last years were very harsh, and it's not. I'm not surprised by these heart attacks, because it were very hard years for Heschel in his last years of his life. But here we can also see his first years of his life, the spiritual tension of his Hasidic background continued to inspire his thought, his writings, all his life. But the question is, what happened to this Rebbe? You know, he behaved like a Rebbe after his father died. You know, all the Hasidic community stood up when he walked. All the Hasidic community asked him when he was 10 years old to sit in his father's chair. And what happened to this young Rebbe that he became a friend of Martin Luther King? That how his beginning meets his end? What happened that made him get to cross the ocean? The story is that, as you know, in order to be a Rebbe, it's not enough that your father was a Rebbe. You need one more thing in order to be a Rebbe, and this is a wife. And when Heschel was 15 years old, he was supposed to marry his cousin and to become a Rebbe. It's a secret of the family. No one really knows what happened there, why they canceled the marriage, but the result was that the boss of the kids, 15 years old, ran out of their home. His cousin made aliyah and became a member of a secular kibbutz here in Israel, escaped from Poland. And Heschel also escaped from Poland to Vilna to learn in non-religious school, secular school. He took off his yarmulke and left home and start learning languages. He knew only Yiddish, and he found a school in Vilna that you can learn in Yiddish, and he started learning to speak languages, to speak Deutsch, to speak all the European languages. And after he graduated school, he went to Berlin to learn in the University of Berlin. Can you imagine yourself, a young Rebbe that took off his yarmulke and cut his pants and became a student in the University of Berlin? He came to Berlin on 1927, when Berlin was a great city, the center of the Western civilization, and he got the last confirmation, the final confirmation of his PhD on 36 in Berlin of 36. It's a very different Berlin. He came to Berlin in 27, and he got his PhD on 36. It's a very different kind of Berlin. Can you imagine? He took off his yarmulke and went to one Berlin, and when he got his PhD, it's a very different kind of Berlin. His daughter told me that one time when he was a student, when he was maybe 25 years old, he went to a cultural event. Maybe it was a play, a theater play or something like this. And suddenly Hitler came, Adolf Hitler came also to the same very event. Can you imagine yourself sit and wait that the event will start, and suddenly Adolf Hitler gets into the room, and all the audience raised their hands and said and screamed, "Heil Hitler!" And you are a Jewish student in Berlin. What would you do in such a situation? If you was a student in Berlin, 25 years old, and suddenly Adolf Hitler get into the same event that you went to hear, to see, what did you do? What would you do in such a situation? I only can imagine that Heschel couldn't continue to be there, and he went back to his room, and maybe he tried to speak with this about his friends in the university. But then I think, who were his friends in the university? As you know, most of the German students vote for Hitler. Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany by the democratic election. And maybe his friends told Heschel, "What do you want? We need a strong leader. The only important question is the economy, and Hitler will be good for our economy." And I only can think what Heschel can say to his friends. Maybe, is there a chance that he also will vote for Hitler? If, for example, Hitler hated only the LGBT community and not the Jews, is there a chance that Heschel would vote for him? This is a very, very hard question. Of course, Heschel didn't vote for Hitler. He has no German. He came from Poland. He can't vote in the election of Germany. But what would the German Jews would do if Hitler hated another part of the people? If Hitler spoke only against the LGBT community, what the Jews in Germany would do? How many of the Jews would vote for him because he's a very important leader for the economic problem? You know, when Heschel, one of his first books, which he published in Frankfurt on 1937, was about Don Yitzhak Abarbanel. Do you know Isaac Abarbanel? He was a famous Jew who had to escape from Spain on 1492 when he had to choose between Christianity and leaving Spain. You know, Don Yitzhak Abarbanel. Why Heschel wrote about him a book, a biography on 1937 in Frankfurt? Maybe because he thought that the Jews in Germany also will have to choose between leaving Germany and etc. He couldn't imagine the Holocaust, of course, on 1937. And in the last paragraph of this book, Heschel wrote on 1937 that the Jews in Spain on 1492 didn't know that they had a luck. Why they had a luck? Heschel wrote, because if we would stay in Spain, what would be our part in the murder of 1 million of Indians, Native Americans, that the Spanish army made in the very same years? You know, they discovered America, and they killed millions of Native Americans. And Heschel said, we had a luck that we had to escape from Spain, because if we were staying here, what was our part in this murder? And this is a very, very harsh saying to say it on 1937 in Frankfurt. Namely, that Heschel said to his friends, to his Jewish friends in Germany, we have a luck that Hitler hates us, because if Hitler would hate only the LGBT community, what might be our part in this hate? We had the luck that we have to escape from. We have a luck that we have to escape from Spain, and we have a luck that we have to escape from Germany. Of course, he couldn't know that what would be the unbelievable future of the Holocaust, but I think you can see here the very source of his thought. If there is a if there is a situation that I might vote for Hitler, there is a very deep problem in my life, and my duty as a Jew is not to establish a Jewish homeland. My duty as a Jew is to save the world from such an environment, a philosophy that makes Hitler the leader of one of the strongest democracies of the West. You see, in Israel, when people speak about the Holocaust, everyone say the meaning of the Holocaust is the state of Israel. This is the answer. This is the solution. But Heschel was a very different of philosopher. For him, the meaning of the Holocaust was the duty to change the world. If I myself might vote for Hitler, if I myself was part of this problem, what is the meaning of the Holocaust? The meaning of the Holocaust is to change the Western civilization. The meaning of the Holocaust is that we have to deepen the humanistic values. We have to deepen the values of the democracy. We have to help the Western civilization to save itself. Do you want to read another text of Heschel from these days? Maybe you can. I need again if someone wants to read this unbelievable text, The Meaning of This Hour. This is a part of Heschel's lecture in Frankfurt that he translated into English on 43. He lectured these words in Frankfurt on 38, and when he came to America, he translated it into English and with a few changes. But this is a very important text of his mission as a Jewish philosopher. Yes, who wants to read?
From where?
From a tale.
A tale is told of a band of inexperienced mountain climbers. Without guides, they struck recklessly into the wilderness. Suddenly, a rocky ledge gave way beneath their feet, and they tumbled headlong into a dismal pit. In the darkness of the pit, they recovered from their shock only to find themselves set upon by a swarm of angry snakes. Every crevice became alive with fanged, hissing things. For each snake the desperate men slew, 10 more seemed to lash out in its place. Strangely enough, one man seemed to stand aside from the fight. When indignant voices of his struggling companions reproached him for not fighting, he called back, "If we remain here, we shall be dead before the snakes. I am searching for a way of escape from the pit for all of us." Our world seems not unlike a pit of snakes. We did not sink into the pit in 1939 or even in 1933. We had
Three, thank you.
we had descended into it generations ago, and the snakes have sent their venom into the bloodstream of humanity, gradually paralyzing us, numbing nerve after nerve, dulling our minds, darkening our vision. Good and evil that were once as real as day and night have become a blurred mist. In our everyday life we worship force, despised compassion, and obeyed no law but our unappeasable appetite. The vision of the sacred has all but died in the soul of man. And when greed, envy, and the reckless will to power came to maturity, the serpents cherished in the bottom of our civilization broke out of their dens to fall upon the helpless nations. Continue?
Yes.
Tanks and planes cannot redeem humanity, nor the discovery of guilt by association nor suspicion. A man with a gun is like a beast without a gun. The killing of snakes will save us for the moment, but not forever. The war has outlasted the victory of arms as we fail to conquer the infamy of the soul, the indifference to crime when committed against others, for evil is indivisible. It is the same in thought and in speech, in private and in social life. The greatest task of our time is to take the souls of men out of the pit. The world has experienced that God is involved. Let us forever remember that the sense for the sacred is as vital to us as the light of the sun. There can be no nature without spirit, no world without the Torah, no brotherhood without a father, no humanity without attachment to God.
Wow. Have you ever read such a text? Can you believe that he wrote it in Frankfurt on 38? A man with a gun is like a beast without a gun. Yes, what's happened to the Western civilization? What is our duty as Jews in such a situation? Is our task to fight against the snakes? To make another war? Heschel is the lonely man who tried to find a way out of the pit of the snakes. To write an alternative thought. His task as a Jewish philosopher, as I said before, is not to help the Jews to live inside the Western civilization. His task as a Jewish philosopher is to suggest the deep spirit of Judaism as an alternative state of mind for all the Western people, to help us, the Western civilization, to find back our way to sacred humanism, to brotherhood, as he said in his last sentence. What happened to our Western civilization? Why we lost solidarity? Why every nation thinks only on itself? And this is his task as a Jewish philosopher. And this is why it is so important to the understanding of human dignity. This is the topic of our classes. When Heschel tried to read the Jewish sources, he looked for an alternative. He looked for another perspective about moral issues. He looked for a source for inspiration in order to change the Western civilization. This is his uniqueness as a Jewish philosopher. Another text or questions? What do you want? When we should finish, Sarah, I don't remember.
You have till the hour, so you've got about 9 minutes.
Oh, 9 minutes? Okay, so maybe another text. I have to read it.
יש לי שאלה.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question about the last few sentences. I understand it from a religious perspective, but what about people who are not religious? It seems that this last sentence focuses so much on belief in God that it excludes those who don't have that. So I just have a question about his view on that.
Thank you. We will see it in the next lectures when we will read a very famous speech of Heschel when he stood next to Martin Luther King and he tried to explain why the most important opposite of racism is God. The most extreme opposite of racism is God. So I will speak more about your question in the next class, but in few words, if I can say, Heschel didn't write about religious person. He wrote about God, and God is not a religious person. He didn't write about faith in God. He wrote about the challenge of brotherhood, which he believed is in deep need of a father or mother. As well as Martin Luther King, as well as Heschel, believed that in order to fight racism, we have to recover the brotherhood or the sisterhood of the humanity. In order to recover the solidarity, we have to bring back the perspective of a parent. Namely, Heschel didn't speak about religion. God is not a religious person. He speaks about solidarity and brotherhood. And he and Martin Luther King believed that the deepest source of solidarity is the perspective of a parent, of a father or mother. And I will speak more about this issue in the next class, but maybe another sentence. In my life, I met a lot of religious people that have no God in their life, and a lot of non-religious people who live in a deep solidarity. And this is the most important question for Heschel. Living in solidarity, not the saying I believe in God, because if you say I believe in God and you don't live in solidarity, there is no sense to your words, according to him, and I will show it in the next class. All right? Okay, another question or another text? What do you want? Question, yes.
Yeah, so in the text that we just read, it suggests almost a pacifism on Heschel's part.
Yes.
So in the face, so the question is, in the abstract, if you don't tend to the snakes while you're looking for the way out, you easily will end up being killed by one of those snakes. And so, this is happening prior to the real launching of this is 1938, right? That he writes this?
Yes.
So this is just prior to the real outbreak of the war. It's already clear as to what the Nazis are up to, but it has yet to really materialize. And so the question is, if you're going to be combating evil, which obviously the Nazis were, and there are other evils in the world, is there a time for Heschel in which you not as an individual but as a collective, some are responsible for finding the way out while others are trying to battle the snakes that are right in front of them?
Yes. Maybe it's also a question about his Zionism. Yes. I think that he changed his mind on this subject during his lifetime, but on 38 and on 43 and maybe until 55, he thought that the rule of the Jews is to suggest a moral alternative and not fight. He believed he was a diaspora Jew. Do you know such people?
But for the example, forget about the Zionist perspective on it for a moment. For those who launch the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, is Heschel suggesting, from what you just said, that they are losing, that they are not focusing on what it is that they should be focusing on, and instead, because the thing is, if you can't survive, you can't then serve that mission that Heschel says that Jews should be involved in.
Yes, Geula Cohen, Geula Cohen, he was a very extreme right-wing member of the Israeli Knesset, and she was a journalist on the 60s, and she interviewed Heschel on 65, and she asked him this question, and he fought back and said, if you have the choice, if someone will try to put you in a gas chamber, and you have one choice to put him in the gas chamber, what would you do? And she said, according to herself, she wrote about it. She said, I will put him in gas chamber. And I think that Heschel saw his job to fight for a moral alternative, and he believed in these years that the Jews shouldn't be part of wars in the world. Or it's a very good thing that America will fight the Nazis and will try to kill the snakes. But the Jews, our mission is to work in order to write, in order to find, in order to bring to the Western civilization an alternative, and a moral alternative. He changed his mind. It's a topic for another lecture, but it starts from such a thinking, I believe. We have to finish. We have to.
That's our time.
So
yes.
please read yourself the next sources. They're very important. Yes.
Awesome.
Sarah?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to give a quick plug. We are going to continue our fall programming at Drisha on Sunday at 10 a.m. with the first part of a class series by Rabbi David Silber, Your Name Shall Be Great, the Abraham Narrative. And in addition to this one, we have many more classes happening right now, and you can find out all the information and find all the registration links at www.drisha.org/classes. So again, thank you to everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing you at another class.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for all of you.
It was excellent.